Hey, Foot Clan. Today's show is brought to you by FantasyChamps.com. Not only can you get awesome trophies and gear for all of your victories, but you can get unbelievable custom fantasy football jerseys with your team name, your favorite number, your color scheme. Go to FantasyChamps.com. Use the promo code BALLERS to save 10%.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from Draft.com Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. So fine to be back. Thursday, April 19th. The Fantasy Footballers Podcast. How you doing, guys?
I was letting you handle that one yourself. It was just going so well.
It's been one of those days.
It's going great, man. It's going fantastic. I'm a little upset that it is not already the NFL draft, but it's so soon.
It's mere moments.
And I'm so happy that today we're covering the quarterback rankings for rookies, right?
No.
Dang it. What? Dang it.
We're doing our early quarterback
rankings,
and then we'll talk rookies very, very soon. This is the time when you should get the spot on the couch ready, though. Like, you should lay your claim so that nobody else can take it.
Get the police tape.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mark it off.
All right.
Get the snacks ready.
I can't wait.
Always have the snacks ready, Mike. Don't be a fool.
Yeah, you're
I
at
know
100.
Jason's been doing work. He's got his early rookie quarterback rankings. Terrible rankings. He does have them done.
The worst. I mean,
wrong order, but right names.
All my film study, eyes closed.
Yeah, which I don't understand.
Just to show off.
Doesn't make just to show off. Look what I can do. All right, today, quick question. What's your favorite personal example of drafting a quarterback late in fantasy drafts and hitting on the year-long starter? We talk all about streaming quarterbacks. This is the gold mine, though. You spend a late draft pick on a quarterback that ends up being a year-long starter. You don't even have to play the week-to-week game. You just lock him in, and that's called the old lock and mock. You lock him in, and then you mock your league mates.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mike,
do you have an example?
I didn't know who you were going to pass.
I think we all have examples, but, Mike, you've led the charge. You've got a lot of them, so we'll let you kick it off.
I'm surprised you even had the ability to pick one.
Well, this one was my favorite.
Just got a bucket full.
Because it just summarizes, fantasy football as a whole. 2015, I took Carson Palmer. I took him in the 10th round, very late. I believe I was the last team to grab a starting quarterback. I had, with Carson Palmer's help, the highest scoring team in the history of that league still hold the record. And I took home third place.
You're definitely 100% the only person who knows that stat about that team.
I just happened to look it up today.
But you only know that stat
because you
when you
third
don't
place.
win the championship, because you're like, I need something. I did it. Look, that's right. I did it.
I should have won.
Who do you think?
Yeah. By the way, I would have crushed the championship match had I not been
Was that the year that I won?
This is a different league. This is my money league.
Yeah,
mine was from that same year. Great year for me. It was Cam Newton. Finished the number one quarterback. Went very late in
2015.
Yes, in 2015 went very, very late. I looked up his ADP today. He was double digits back in 2015.
Do you remember how you acquired him?
So actually, I guess this is a slight misnomer because it was right after the draft. It was waivers. So, so he went undrafted that year.
No, he was on my team.
Oh yeah,
and then he stunk week one, and I said that I knew it, Cam Newton.
Yeah,
you bum, and I dropped him,
and I picked him up and had the number one quarterback the rest of the year.
Yep.
I thank you greatly, Mike.
Yep.
Mike has the ability. He's done this before. RG3, Tony Romo, other players. But what the worst part about Mike is everybody knows what Mike's doing, and in many drafts, people have tried to identify the guy he was targeting super, super late and then steal him from him. And then Mike just takes somebody else and they're fine too.
Yeah, because it's a quarterback.
Yeah, so I'll bring you back in time to a great old story.
It's the worst story.
Kurt Warner, when he was battling with Matt Leinart in preseason, looked a lot better than Matt Leinart. against the Raiders preseason week 3, and I just walked over, and I believe it was like 2013. I clicked the old sign button, and I rode him to a championship game.
From my perspective,
it was definitely not 2013. I'm just going to help you out with that.
Yes.
Because he was not playing football in 2013.
But when that year was, I remember the preseason game 3 game, and I saw the exact same thing that Andy Holloway saw. I went to my computer, and literally I was about 1 minute late from signing Kurt Warner that same year, thanks, Andy. And I believe you rode him to a championship that year.
I'm going to assume it was the
I rode
Super
it
Bowl
to a championship game.
because that was the year that was his best year in Arizona. Over 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns. By far the best year.
Yeah, and he was the hometown guy, so it was just an extra bonus.
All
right, find us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. The website's thefantasyfootballers.com. That's where you can submit questions for the mailbag segment of the show. You can also find us on YouTube. We are on Patreon, jointhefoot.com, our community, and Instagram.com/fantasyfootballers. So we're going to get right into it. We're recording this show a little bit early. Brooks will be back for our next episode, so we'll be completely live.
We're not even right now. We're not even aware of that crazy Odell Beckham trade that went down.
We're not even aware of those incredible signings.
No, he's not going anywhere.
And that, we're just skipping the news today.
Well,
there's too many quarterbacks to disparage.
Yes.
Let's get to it.
Yeah, we're getting into all of them, so let's just let's move on.
Quarterbacks.
Draft one late. All right, that is it for today's episode.
It's not the quarterbacks themselves that need to be disparaged. In fact, it's because there are so many great, unbelievably good quarterbacks for fantasy football that it's the position that needs to be disparaged. I love this quick question today, Brooks, because it illustrates the point. Like waiver wire, late round, and you ride these guys to victory for your entire year, and there was no shortage of options from us to pick for just the last several years. So, I mean, today we'll cover them, but there are so many options late. I was thinking about it today. I was looking from the bottom up, starting at quarterback 31, because there's pretty much right now only 31 starters. Sorry, A.J. McCarron. And it was like, okay, there's a couple guys that I think are going to be really bad. But then I start getting to like, okay, Case Keenum. I think he could be absolutely fine. He's like my, quarterback 26. I don't remember that low of a quarterback that I liked in recent years.
So we're going to go through as many as we can. Probably try not to talk too long on the top guys just because we know where they belong. Speaking of which, Aaron Rodgers, our consensus number one.
Absolutely. The Aaron Rodgers is an absolute touchdown stud. He was on pace again this year for 40-plus touchdowns. But the question is, I guess the biggest question for me is Jordy Nelson. He's gone. There was an absolute Vulcan mind meld between Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson. But the past 5 years, there's been 17 games without Jordy. Now, if you average those out, he's about 3 points. Aaron Rodgers is about 3 points worse per game. Still averaging, 23 fantasy points a game. Perfectly fine. I will say, in 2015, that was the Jordy Nelson where he missed, the whole year. And he struggled. He struggled that second half of the season. He was only averaging 2 touchdowns a game, which for most quarterbacks, that's fantastic, but that's not Aaron Rodgers. That's not what you expect. But that was the year there was no number one on the team. Devontae Adams had not grown into his role. He had not broken out. That was the year when Richard Rodgers tied for the league or the team lead with 8 touchdowns. So I'm not worried. Aaron Rodgers is by far my number one guy.
Yeah, I think the by far is right because even though they lost Jordy, Devontae Adams is, I think, capable of being a number one now. You have Randall Cobb. You have Jimmy Graham. But to me, the difference between Aaron Rodgers and the next 3 guys is monumental. It's massive. I mean, since 2011, Aaron Rodgers, if he's playing, healthy, he's one of, if not the best quarterback in fantasy every year.
Do you believe that there will be a mad scramble for some undrafted pass catcher from Green Bay at some point this season?
Yeah, I mean, if Geronimo Allison comes out week 1 and looks like he's super involved, I mean, there's going to be someone surprisingly involved.
His eight-year average, which is a nice track record, 4,200 plus passing yards, 35 passing TDs on average per year.
It's nice.
Locked and loaded. All right, number 2, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was he was by far the number 1 quarterback last year, and doesn't get talked about enough for whatever reason. Probably because watching that team at times was painful, and we've talked about it before. Russell Wilson going deep so often, but that led to a lot of opportunities. 3,983 yards, 34 touchdowns, just 11 interceptions, but also rushed for 586 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's why he was so high above at number 1.
You know what I think happened to Russell Wilson? We talk about this a lot on the show. The brand, and I'm talking like an iron brand, just melting your skin off. Those first couple games, that's who you were.
Right.
That's what fantasy players remember. They're not off the top of the head going, oh yeah, Russell Wilson in standard leagues was about 50 points better than the quarterback 2, but the first 2 weeks of the season, he stunk. Quarterback 24, quarterback 14.
And made that brand on your
he just
on your mind,
right on the chest of those who drafted him and spent high draft capital, and probably a lot of people dropped him.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The problem with Russell Wilson and why we don't view him as high, coming off of the number 1 year, it's an emotional thing because you had those first 2 weeks, which are 2 of his only. He only had 5 down weeks the whole season, but 2 of the other 3 bad weeks were in championship weeks, in the playoffs. They were week 15 and 16. So he let you down right at the get-go after you drafted him, and then he let you down after getting you to the championship or to that semifinal matchup. So there's a lot of bad emotions, and then you have to deal with the fact that Paul Richardson, gone. Jimmy Graham, gone. The team itself looks worse, which I think that could work.
Seahawks,
the team,
gone.
They supersonicked and got out of there.
Oh!
Sorry, Seattle.
Wow.
Bringing up
Sean
bad
Kemp
memories.
is shaking his head at you. Look, I think Wilson's immune to the losses. I really do.
Totally agree.
I don't think, because you have the foundation of rushing yardage, because I don't think Paul Richardson was, you could substitute him in for somebody else. It's like the Steve Nash effect back in the NBA. Like, Wilson made Richardson. Richardson didn't make Wilson. And it'll be interesting. This is not uncharted territory for him to finish in that top 3. 2015, third best. 2014, third best. So
he's never not been a quarterback 1 his entire career.
4 of the last 5 seasons, 500-plus rushing yards. You just had 2 years ago when he had the major ankle injuries. It seemed like every week
stifled that production.
He was getting hurt, so he was down at 259 rushing yards. But other than that, over 500. And if your quarterback is going to rush for over 500 yards – because of how things are scored, whether you like it or not, Jason.
I'm on the not.
And I lean that way as well. But that's how we score things right now, so he's very, very valuable.
All right, let's go to the number 3, the TB12 method, Tom Brady himself.
Plant-based
Tom Brady.
Oh, plant man.
Delivering the goods, 4,500 yards, 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions.
No.
Oh, no, I was going, plant man knows that the plants will grow, man.
Oh.
That's an old reference, and I'm sure there's no way you guys know that one.
No, but that's what Twitter's for, Mike.
Plant man knows that the plants will grow.
Oh, no, we do not. Brooks, shaking your head.
Man.
No, Giamatti doesn't even know what you're talking about.
I don't expect you because this is going super deep. Because
it's something my dad used to say to me every night.
This was a reference from Beavis and Butthead.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
Plant man.
All right, Tom Brady. We both, all 3 of us have him at number 3. Consistency rank at number 7 last year. Look, it was somewhat of a strange year where at times, because of losing Edelman, because of the ups and downs during the season, you maybe felt differently about how he performed, but he ended at number 3. What can you complain about?
Yeah, it's really hard, and he's getting more weapons back, healthy.
He lost his number 1 weapon from last year.
Well, he lost Brandon Cooks, but
I
mean, to me, the outside threat of Brandon Cooks can be filled with Chris Hogan, Malcolm Mitchell, while the slot, the underneath work that he has always thrived. You've got Julian Edelman. You have so many guys to compete. We don't even know who's going to make the roster. They just gave the 1-year deal to Jordan Matthews, who I still think could make some noise there. You've got Gronk. I mean, he has plenty of weapons to use. You haven't seen him slow down. You have to – I mean, I don't know how you can rank him much lower than this anyways, just because he gets the job done. And you look, he's only had 2 of the last 10 years where he's basically not a top 10 quarterback.
Is there a part of you who we're going to move on to our number 4? By the way,
I have a couple things I just wanted to throw out for Tom Brady real quick. Is I'm with Jason. I want to rank him lower, but he just ends up there. And this past year, when he finished as the quarterback 3, he was only better than the quarterback 7 3 times per a weekly basis. But he can put up massive games. And I thought, okay, well, what happens if Brandon Cooks is gone? He doesn't have the speed. And I went back to 2010. He was the quarterback 3. He didn't have a single receiver over 150 yards.
Yeah. Well,
he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time.
And that's what I'm saying, where
vegetables.
Plant man. I want him to be the plant man. I want to rank him lower than quarterback 3. It just can't happen.
Well, let's talk about the differences between him and our number 4. And our number 4 is Cam Newton. Big bounce back year last year. Ended up number 2 according to our scoring system. And 16 games, just 3,300 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and 16 picks. So that by itself, you're like, hey, you're down in the 20s. And then he ran for 754 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns. And that's why he's Cam Newton. And this is what he's done. I mean, he's had top 4 performances in 4 of his 6 years. And he was Cam again last year. And the question that I have is, preferentially, let's say you end up with Tom Brady or Cam Newton. You got that heads-up choice. Cam Newton, higher percentage of great games, okay? So week-winning type of monstrous performances. Brady a little more consistent, seventh most consistent compared to Cam Newton at 10. What do you prefer in your quarterback? Tommy touchdown or Cam Newton, who has that foundational rushing attack, and then you get Greg Olsen back, hopefully healthy this year?
I mean, if they cost the same, I think I would rather have Brady, a little bit more consistency, because Brady's still, you say not in the top 7 a certain amount, but he's, almost always a quarterback 1. He's very solid. He's not, letting your team down on a weekly basis. I would rather have the consistency.
He did in the playoffs.
But, yes, he did a couple years in a row, I think, in week 16. Yes. The issue is that Tom Brady will cost more. Tom Brady will be
really. You think Brady will go higher in drafts this year?
I do, just because of the name, and maybe people will be
Super
back on.
Cam was the quarterback too.
Sure, maybe people will be back on Cam Newton with the bounce back year. If they did cost the same, I'd rather go Brady.
Right now, based on ADP data, which is limited, but from the past week at fantasyfootballcalculator.com, Brady's going in the back of the 4th, whereas Cam is going in the middle of the 6th.
Yeah, so in that scenario, I would much rather have Cam.
It's basically Rodgers, Wilson, Brady.
Yeah. So far, it's the same top 4, which, again, I won't have a single one of these guys on my roster.
Yeah, and just jumping off the page for Cam Newton is the bust percentage at 44%. So, I mean, yes.
That's the other side of the –
he finishes the quarterback 2 on the season, but nearly 50% of the time you went, what the heck, Cam?
A complete bust really let you down. There are 3 guys that really did that a lot this past year. They all 3 had 44%, Cam Newton, Kirk Cousins, and I'll wait on the 3rd.
Oh. Yeah. We're going to get into that.
We'll get to him.
All right, so finally, but we're not all yes men here. We do not all agree, and we finally are getting to the quarterbacks here where we have some disagreement. Number 5, Kirk Cousins, is actually our consensus number 5. To me, that's wild. I'm really surprised. It should be the next guy on this list.
No way.
But Jason,
the next guy
Jason
shouldn't
caused
even be
major
remotely
issues.
Close.
Kirk Cousins, wow, I cannot wait. Let's just skip him. No, Kirk Cousins, I have him at 9. Jason has him at 6. Mike has him at 5. Jason's 6 ranking is unbelievable.
Well, we got to stay with Kirk Cousins.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
He has him at 6, the guy that he's disparaged all offseason. That's my whole point.
Oh, I got you.
Last year he was the 15th most consistent quarterback, goes to Minnesota, equipped with all of the, he's got the full holster. Maybe he's got double holsters. He's got the ammo bag on. I mean, he is ready to rumble.
Those are the reasons I've got him at 6. When I disparaged him this offseason, it was more so a matter of I don't think he is necessarily worth the money. I think he'll be a little bit overhyped wherever he goes. But he did end up going to the best case scenario, the best weapons, best offensive line, best run game,
best defense.
Now the defense I think hurts a little bit from a fantasy perspective because I brought up this point earlier in the offseason. You saw the games where Case Keenum, they won, and his passing attempts were just not even high enough to be fantasy relevant for that week. And you're going to have some of those from Kirk Cousins. They're not going to want him to go out and throw the ball 35 times if they're winning the game and beating down their opponent. Why would they? They're not focused on your fantasy points. That's, I think, going to be the issue that we run into this year with Kirk Cousins. Andy, you've got him at 9, so I'm assuming you see more of that side of it. What is the side that you think will let people down on Captain Kirk?
Yeah, I don't think it's liking other players more. That's all it is. I mean, you have to make a decision between these guys. I think Cousins will have a fine season. I don't think he'll be forced. I think it's what you said. He won't be forced into those situations where maybe he has to air it out as often. Maybe there's a game or two here or there where it's a one-touchdown game and they get it done. I just like other players more. One of them being number 6 on our list, Drew Brees. I've got him at 5. Mike has him at 6. Jason, you got him at 11, and for some reason you've been filled with a venom against Drew Brees this morning in the office. I don't know why. I'd love to hear the arguments. You seem to have them. Top 10 quarterback every year since 2008. Last year, quarterback 9, just 23 touchdowns, 4,300 yards, 0, quote, great games. Jason, why are you so down on Drew Brees? Why are you letting him push that QB1 envelope here and almost drip into the QB2 range?
Yes, I am down on Drew Brees from a fantasy perspective. He didn't show me anything that said that he lost his arm strength or his ability a la old Peyton Manning. And obviously the yardage was good. It was a touchdown issue, which I'm sure people are saying, oh, if the touchdowns come back, he'll be great. But here's my issue with Drew Brees, and it's a major one. The style of Drew Brees that he has been the last decade is no longer needed and wasn't used. This is a team that does not look like the hapless Saints of the last 5 years or so. They are a defense first, great running game. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns on the ground, score some touchdowns with their defense. And if you look at what happened last year, so last season, right, you've got Drew Brees who finishes as a top 10 quarterback. So everyone's happy with Drew Brees, right? You drafted him, you got a top 10 quarterback. You were freaking murdered by Drew Brees if you played him last year. I mean, you didn't even make the playoffs. You didn't come close to making the playoffs. You know how many times Drew Brees actually finished as a top 12, meaning a quarterback 1 last year? 4 times. 4. Deshaun Kaiser did it 7 times. He was not helping you win games. He was losing for you, but he was never so bad. He didn't go out there and put up 5 points to where his end-of-season rank was terrible. Can he bounce back? Absolutely. He's a Hall of Famer. He's great. But I think that this is the Drew Brees we're going to see is, manage the game, be smart, be accurate, set up a great run game. Those are my arguments.
I understand some of that, but I think that if we were ranking him based off of last year's performance, you'd get it right. But we're projecting towards next year, and the way I look at it is I think Drew Brees had arguably his greatest NFL season ever last year. Broke the accuracy record in the NFL, and you know what he did it on? The league-leading yards per attempt number. You talk about manage the game, Drew Brees. He wasn't. He was the most yards per attempt. He's never done that in his career, and yet his yards per attempt were that high. I don't view them as a defense-first team. I looked at them as a balanced team, and I simply think that the touchdown number is going to swing back to the mean, which is all you need from Drew Brees next year to get what you want in fantasy. Now, the value-wise, I thought maybe that season that you're describing, the painful branding of sadness that he did last year, I thought that would drive him down the draft board. So I don't think I'm going to have him because he's still going in that 5th range. He's going ahead of Cam Newton. So I don't think I'm going to have Drew Brees. I do think that, what you said in the beginning, no decrease in skill set, every ability to lead that offense, and arguably the best NFL season I've ever seen him have.
From 2014 to 2016, the New Orleans Saints rushing touchdown to passing touchdown ratio was 2-1 in favor of passing touchdowns, and all of a sudden last year it swings to a 1-to-1 ratio where they're equal in passing touchdowns and equal in rushing touchdowns. I don't think Drew Brees is done. He threw for over 4,300 yards. That's not a game manager. That's a guy who's winning the games and just didn't happen to have the touchdown luck. His touchdown rate went from 5.1, 5.5, down to 4.3. That thing's going to jump back up into the fives, in my opinion, which makes Drew Brees a fantastic quarterback. The previous 3 years before last year, he led the league in passing. I don't buy the narrative that it's a run and defense only team.
Let me ask you something, Jay. If Drew Brees was 31 years old and had the season he had last year,
yes,
does it change the way you view the next season?
It really, really does. The fact that he is 39 years old, they have managed this team from a roster construction standpoint to help him and develop this team away from his strengths. I mean, they're not going out and getting another super high-profile wide receiver that's, they didn't go and try to make a run at someone there. They did try to make a run at Ndamukong Suh and spend their money on big piece, defensive guys. They're going out and making offers for Cameron Meredith. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, he has to prove himself in the positive direction after what he did last year. So, to Jason's point, if he gives you what he gave you last year, you're not going to be happy. All right, before we move on, that is the kind of player debate you're going to get in the Ultimate Draft Kit. UltimateDraftKit.com. You can pre-order it now. It comes out on June 1st. We'll have rookie rankings in there ahead of time. And the beauty of the Ultimate Draft Kit is it equips you for your draft, and it's updated all offseason long. There are going to be over 100 player profile videos where we update these as well. We update the videos where we profile individual players. Maybe you have a tough decision to make between a couple guys. Maybe you have a keeper decision that you have to make before the draft. We help you with the video profiles. We have all of our rankings, the top 200 list, player-by-player blurbs and analysis. Matt Harmon's back with reception perception content. And if you're not aware, maybe you have heard us talk about it, you haven't checked it out at ultimatedraftkit.com, pre-order pricing is $24.99. That's the price, and you get all the tiers, all the cheat sheets, all the breakdowns, all the projections, all the auction values, consistency charts. It is jam-packed. This is our, what did you call it, the magnum opus?
Yes.
Of the podcast.
It's our baby, too. This is what we care for and
we
pour ourselves
We listen
into.
to your feedback. We survey every single purchaser at the end of every season to get your feedback about how to improve, how to make it faster, how to make it better. This is the way you dominate your draft. It's plain and simple. The UDK is what it is. The UDK, UltimateDraftKit.com.
We want to thank Pristine Auction for sponsoring today's show. This is the place you need to go for all your sports memorabilia. All of our signed jerseys always come from Pristine Auction. Who's on the wall today, Brooks? We got AJ Green. AJ Green signed jersey for prices that you cannot believe. Here's some things that have recently gone on at Pristine Auction. A signed Stephon Diggs jersey, $55. 55. Oh! Are you a fan of the Broncos? Or are you a fan of Derriere's Jake Butt jersey?
Oh,
$36.
Are you a fan of the Broncos and Derriere's?
Who's not?
Wait, how much?
$36. Assigned it for the Broncos.
I need one $55 item a day, Brooks.
55. Oh, for real. And if you're a really true Broncos fan, Demaryius Thomas signed NFL football, $78. There's tons of deals. They have new things every single day. Hundreds of daily auctions. Check it out, pristineauction.com. Make a completely free account and let them know that the Fantasy Footballers sent you.
Every time we go out to a restaurant as a company, and it's someplace we've been before, Brooks always gets the same thing that he got the time before, right?
Yes. If
he finds something,
when
Brooks, you find something.
That's what he gets.
He's a man of routine.
Yeah, you find something you like, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? I mean, that's just your personality.
Dad did it.
That's all true.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
right,
you
guys.
find something you like, you get it every time.
I don't take the risk.
The next guy on this list is you would never order him, Brooks.
Nah.
Deshaun Watson, tied for 7th on our consensus quarterback rankings. And to me, he's trying something new in the landscape of quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah.
He is flipping that menu over to that, chef's favorite. I've never seen this before. And we've never seen what happened last year.
The problem is I fear that it comes with that market price tag.
Oh.
You know, when you get the menu and you look and it says, how much is it? Oh, this is market?
That's when you get the fish.
Right,
It's always at the market price.
Exactly.
How much is in your wallet?
You know, I've seen Deshaun Watson in drafts. His range is unbelievable. But if you actually go to some of the higher end, some of the sites where the big money entries, and you play those level of best ball, the ADP on Deshaun Watson has him oftentimes as the third quarterback off the board.
Yes.
Because people are chasing the
in redraft, he's fourth right now.
Yeah, the unfathomable production he was having. He wasn't, it's like, okay.
It's the Michael Vick effect.
There's a lot of Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, two great quarterbacks, both got injured, both coming back, but you can't really compare what Deshaun Watson was doing to what Carson Wentz was doing. You can't compare what Deshaun Watson was doing to what anyone was doing. And
he was going full Space Jam.
You cannot compare what Deshaun Watson was doing to the year that Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdowns.
How many?
55! Oh, it's nonstop today. That one was completely unintentional, too.
Guess what Greg Olson's current ADP is right now, by the way?
Oh, come on.
But that season, the season that Manning had 55 touchdowns, got to control myself. And that was an 8.3 touchdown percentage. Deshaun Watson, 9.3. Almost 1 out of every 10 passes was going for a touchdown. You got to control yourself.
Yes.
That's impossible. Okay, fine. If you even the hardiest of Deshaun Watson truthers have to admit that's impossible. But what can he actually do?
Well,
When we're out of the realm of the stratosphere and castles on clouds, where can he possibly go?
Here's what we do know. He can win you a week by himself. Maybe you make the argument that the consistency at that production level is impossible, but he at least showed us that he has the capability of blowing you away on the field for one game at a time, to being one of those type. Maybe that's how it goes this year. But I cannot imagine if he's healthy, you're not going to get a handful of games where he puts together that kind of efficiency.
Like Cam Newton.
Yes.
Cam Newton will give you huge monster games. I took a look back. The past 5 years, there have been 5 times when a quarterback played all 16 games and finished with a touchdown rate of over 7%. The following year, with those 5 quarterbacks, that's Peyton Manning, Rodgers, Cam Newton, Matt Ryan, and Russell Wilson, there was an average drop in their touchdown percent of 2.7. So now you take 2.7 away from 9, and you're still very, very happy. But my point is, when these quarterbacks, and these are elite-level quarterbacks, maybe you don't want Matt Ryan in there, whatever. When they've had the monster season, there is always a fall from grace, and you regress to your average because that's just what happens.
Yeah, I completely agree. If Deshaun Watson comes out next year and is pretty much a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, not going to be surprised. So you might be asking yourself, well, with all those things said, why is he tied for 7 in our consistency rankings? And the reason is because you have to take a shot. Yes. You have to swing for the fences to see if he is. I tried to just I was anti-Deshaun Watson throughout so many weeks last year. Like, it's not going to keep happening. It's impossible to keep happening. But he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's done it his entire career. He did it at Clemson, where
he has great weapons with
every time,
Hopkins and Fuller.
Yeah, and every time that people count him out, if you count him out from this injury, I just don't want to be on that side anymore. Where you go, maybe Deshaun Watson is just truly a. He's what he's been his entire career in college and in
wasn't Dabo Swinney the Clemson head coach? Didn't he call him Michael Jordan?
He did.
He said, you pass on him, you're passing on Michael Jordan. At least 7 games in, he's dead right.
He's the type of quarterback where it's like, I plan usually when I draft a quarterback late. I know I'm going to drop him. I don't ever fear dropping a quarterback. But with Deshaun Watson, if he were to hit, great. But if not, just drop him.
And except for you have to pay too much.
Yeah, that's true.
Andrew Luck comes in at number 7, and guys, this is the human game of Jenga right here. I don't know what to do with Andrew Luck, but I feel like it is. I feel like you got to be afraid.
Oh yeah.
I just read on Deadspin that he has not thrown a real football yet. He's only thrown a small football.
He hasn't thrown the Duke yet.
Yeah, the Duke is the name of the NFL game ball.
That's what he calls it.
But
my Duke is very different.
Yes. Best joke ever.
Andy couldn't handle that one.
I have him at 11, and that is with a fear of the unknown here. Jason at 5, Mike at 8. Your Duke is John Wayne.
This is health.
I know what you're talking about.
This is health. This really is. I have statted him out. The reason that he is up this high at 7 is because I have him at 5. And I have statted him out at 5 with health because I know what I'm doing with Andrew Luck this year, and it's a pretty straightforward thing. I'm watching preseason. If he's playing in preseason, then he's healthy, and I will have him basically at 5. I know what Andrew Luck is. He's great.
But do we know? I mean, is there any fear of, let's say he's perfectly healthy, but you don't throw a football in 2 years?
I am not overly worried, especially given the price that he's going to. He's going to have a huge discounted price. This is again, those are the type of guys I'm going to take the swing on. If he is right, he's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, he's going after Goff right now with the uncertainty.
So that's why I have him ranked 5. But if come preseason, which is still before everyone's normal keeper redraft league drafts, if he's not playing in preseason, he'll be 20 on my quarterback. I mean, he won't be even remotely draftable. That's 2 years of trying to get healthy. So I have chosen to give him the health.
And Mike, you're in between.
And
I'm just hedging here at 8 because if he's played 15 games or more, he's a top 10 quarterback. And you take out his rookie year, and he's a top 5 quarterback. So if he plays, I'm expecting good things from
Maybe
Andrew
they just
Luck.
convert him to running back based on what I've seen him do, running the football. He's a big boy.
Just take throwing out of the equation.
Just take it out. All right. Let's go. I'm going to give you the next 3 on this list because I actually do want to talk about
this next one, man. Jason's ranking of the next guy.
Yeah, Carson Wentz. I have him at 6. Mike 7. Jason's got him at 12.
Get bodied.
I know the argument that Jason has, which is that somehow he'll be less aggressive. Carson Wentz has come out and said
he had the exact same. I guess his is slightly worse than Deshaun Watson, but Jason.
Yeah,
has
I mean
him at
he's
8.
just a great passer. I mean that's Carson Wentz. If you were talking about a player that leaned on rushing yardage to accomplish what he did last year, that wasn't the case. 3,200 yards, 33 passing touchdowns. I still think that their head coach, Doug Peterson, came out and said that they're optimistic. They're hoping that Carson Wentz will be smarter about using his legs, putting himself in difficult positions. I'm leaning on the arm and the film that I see from the arm and the weapons and the offensive line. And so I've got him at 6, Mike 7. He finished last year as the QB 5 despite missing 3 games. So, Jason, you've got him down at the 12 range.
Yeah, I've got him down at 12, my last quarterback 1. And, it's interesting. We're going back-to-back injured quarterbacks here with looking at, Andrew Luck, and why would I rank him high?
Watson, Luck, Wentz.
Right, Winston. But the issue here is due to the time of year that Wentz got injured, you're not going to see Wentz playing a lot of these games. You're not going to know when you need to know, I don't believe, about his health. And yeah, he still had 300 rushing yards, which is that matters quite a bit for a quarterback. A lot of his fantasy production came from that, but it was more than that. It's his scrambling ability, his ability to get outside the pocket on scripted or unscripted runs, to be able to do that. It was a massive injury, and it was super late in the year. I think Carson Wentz's future is bright, but I really do worry about how that injury will affect his style of play. I mean, I've still got him as a quarterback 1, so I'm not sitting here going, oh, Carson's done. He's going to have a terrible year. But I think he's going to lose quite a bit off of that magical season we saw last year. And in addition to that, Mike, you brought this up already, the touchdown rate. He was over 7.
Yeah.
On an average, losing 2% off of that, it's gonna hurt.
Frank Reich came out, the new head coach of the Colts. He said when they warned him last year about protecting himself, it went in one ear, out the other. And that he basically kind of said, no, I'm not backing off. This is how I'm going to play. I think even if the argument is made that he's healthy 100% and returns to that form, you have a higher injury risk with a player like Carson Wentz if he's willing to do that to his body than you do some other quarterbacks.
Certainly.
Matthew Stafford and Phillip Rivers are tied for 10th on our consensus early quarterback rankings. Jason, you've got Stafford the highest at 7th. Mike, 11. I've got him at 16. Rivers I have at 15. You guys have him at 9 and 10. So I'm the lowest on these two players.
You've got Stafford at 16.
Yeah, that's a little low.
Get body.
That's a little low. And again, it's tough because you have players.
Because all these guys we love.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like Jameis Winston this year. I like the upside of Winston. When I look at Stafford, I kind of know what I'm going to get from him.
Oh, yes.
And it's like 4,000 to 4,400 yards and probably like 25 to 30 touchdowns. I don't have any problem.
If it was 30, I'd be – if you're telling me Stafford's going to get 30?
Yeah, I mean, last year was 29, and he was QB7. So, yeah.
Well,
20,
I'm banking on lucky number 7s, He's 2 years in a row at number 7.
He was number 7 back in 2013, and he's been a top 10 guy for 3 straight years. So he's very safe. I think Matthew Stafford's super safe.
Yeah, and, you have the smooth routes of Kenny G.
Can we have the breakout?
So
I think we've played this song more than the fantasy points he scored last year.
Yeah, but you've got another season with him. Marvin Jones.
No more Eric Ebron.
Is back. Yeah, Eric Ebron.
So they actually have a goal line back now with LeGarrette Blount, and they haven't had a true goal line back in a long time. Do you think are you going to factor that as a negative impact?
I mean, it should be. I don't know if their offensive line will allow it to be. I mean, they,
I'm not
every time
about
they've
it.
tried short yardage anything with anyone.
He had many seasons with Joik, and Joik could handle himself down there. I'm not too concerned about that hurting him. He didn't have any rushing touchdowns last year.
An interesting aside, because we had talked about rushing numbers for quarterbacks and what that does to their points. Matt Stafford was the quarterback 7 2 years in a row. However, in 2016, he had 100 fewer passing yards and 5 fewer passing touchdowns. Yet, he had 100 more rushing yards and 2 more rushing touchdowns.
In 2016?
Yeah, wait. Actually, not. Hold on. Now I'm confusing myself. Move on. Ignore me.
We'll come back to you.
All right.
Phillip Rivers.
No, I was right. 2016.
Okay.
He had those rushing stats. Basically, my point was he was a far better passer this past year, but he had a little bit of rushing production 2 years ago and somehow had more points.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just see him as very safe, a late-round guy that if I draft him, I don't have to worry. I don't have to think about getting a second quarterback yet. I'm just going to ride him into the season, and hopefully he has –
the sunset.
Yeah, and hopefully he has a top 5 season again.
I just don't see top 5 anywhere in the realm of possibilities.
Once in his career, right? 2011. That's a long time ago.
It was
one of the reasons I have Rivers a little lower than you guys is because of I believe the range of outcomes he provides to fantasy owners.
That's fine.
I like him as a value quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's a great late-round value, but he's had finishes at or beyond the back of the QB1, QB2 range for the last 6 years. Last year he was 8th. I like the roster. I like the player. I think he's going to be able to get by with 25 touchdowns on this roster, however, with a defense that's improving. He's just kind of okay for me. I like the higher upside guys more than I like Rivers.
That's how I feel about Stafford. It's just
I see these guys as nearly identical to me.
Like, Brooks would order both on the menu. Let's put it that way.
They're a good club sandwich.
Yeah, there's no problem.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Well, I have him higher than Stafford because he's a little bit more consistent for this tier of quarterback. The reemergence of Keenan Allen. He got the interceptions under control last year. They're improving the offensive line. So I still like Rivers as right around that top 10 type of a guy.
Look, the reason that I like Rivers a lot this year is the weapons. I think Melvin Gordon out of the backfield, having Keenan Allen. I believe that Hunter Henry is far better in the pass-catching role than Antonio Gates last year, in which case that's an improvement. Then you get Mike Williams, could be a great wide receiver stepping in. You've still got Tyrell Williams.
I do like Williams.
So, I mean, to me, if you compare the weapons here between Phillip Rivers and Matthew Stafford, the check mark's got to go to Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was kind of curious to see how he performed first half to second half last year. He was much better in the second half.
Well, that was the Keenan Allen explosion.
Well, I mean, we're talking, you cut his season in half, right? You go from a 4,000-yard pace to a 5,000-yard pace. You go from 26 touchdowns to a 30-touchdown pace. Just a very impressive second half. So there's a lot of reasons to kind of like their trajectory heading into the year. One guy I really like, Jameis Winston. We have him at 12 on our consensus rankings. Maybe that's the biggest surprise. He's out ahead of Big Ben, Matt Ryan, some of those guys.
The biggest surprise is that just both you and I, Andy, have him ranked higher than Mike.
Yeah, that is surprising. Mike's got him at 15, Probably trying to not jinx himself here like last year.
Possibly.
But 3,519 wasn't impressive last season, so we're really banking on a bounce-back performance, a guy who's never finished as a QB1.
You're banking on the final 5 games of the season where through those 5 games, literally the overall quarterback one was Jameis Winston. He had a massive jump. He had that shoulder injury. Do not forget that. He was also playing very poor in the first half. First 8 games, only 10 touchdowns. Final 5 games, 9 touchdowns. He still had
5,069-yard pace.
He still had the 5 interceptions over the final 5 games. So I'm growing concerned with Jameis that the step into elite quarterback that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers thought they drafted, I'm concerned that that's not going to happen, and Jameis is always just going to be okay.
Would you rather have Matthew Stafford, who we just talked about?
Are we talking fantasy or real life now?
No. In fantasy, in the 10th round, would you rather have Jameis in the 11th round? Like if those guys are pretty much in the same spot, heads up, you take Stafford over.
I would take Stafford.
Man, I probably would, but it's just the thought process.
You could take Winston and wait and see the first couple weeks and see
the
if
replaceability of quarterback. Just take Winston. Like I said, quarterback won final 5 games. That was not Matt Stafford. So at that point in the draft, I might just go for it.
Go ceiling.
Yeah, knowing that I can just stream if I have to.
All right, give me something about these next 3 guys, and then we'll hit the mailbag. Big Ben at 13, Jimmy G at 14.
He's so handsome.
So handsome. And number 15, Matt Ryan. I don't know if last year we would have expected to be ranking Jimmy Garoppolo ahead of Matt Ryan heading into 2018, but that's the way it landed. He was the QB9, by the way, Jimmy G, through weeks 13 through 17.
Of all of our individual rankings, the only guy here who has a top 10 ranking from one of us is Matt Ryan. Andy, you have him up at 8, so I assume you are seeing some regression to the mean, some bounce back for Matt Ryan off of his atrocious touchdown rate this last year.
Yeah, I mean, the touchdown rate was ridiculous. He only had 20 touchdowns, still over 4,000 yards, still has elite weapons on the roster. You are
Julio Touchdown Jones, they call him.
It's amazing. Julio Jones scored a touchdown in 2 games. 2 out of 16 games, one of the best weapons in football scored. So, yes, the Steven Sarkisian effect was troublesome. And this did not get better over the second half of the year, so you're not really banking on, I learned the system a little better in the second half. But, look, this was a team he's 1 year removed from the number 2 overall finish. I think he's a top 10 quarterback with those weapons that he has. Passing the ball out of the backfield to Freeman and to Coleman, and having Julio Jones is enough for me to buy into Matt Ryan over a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, over a guy like Big Ben. But, hey, if you really hate Sark, I don't blame you for keeping Matt Ryan outside your top 12.
The thing for Big Ben, it was a really strange start to the year. He was very poor for fantasy. Things were not jiving with the offense, and then the bye week hit. After the bye week, he was only out of the quarterback 1 range once. Over that time, I know I talked about Winston final 5 weeks, but this was since the Steelers bye week.
Bigger sample size. Their bye week was a 9.
He was the number 1 quarterback in points per game because he didn't play that final week. But he was sensational that second half. They figured it out, but with Todd Haley gone, there's some changes happening in Pittsburgh. Jason, how do you feel about Big Ben?
I like Big Ben a lot, but I realized this last year there wasn't the same home road split, but he has a long enough career sample size where when I look at going into the NFL draft, I'm going to look at their opening schedule, and as stupid as it sounds, I care a lot about those first 3 weeks when I look at quarterback because I figured that's who I'm drafting the most.
Right.
And so if it turns out that he starts with a home stretch, then sign me up for some Big Ben. He looked great last year. I think a star is born in Juju. You've got Antonio Brown. Great weapons there. Le'Veon Bell obviously gets it done. So I like Big Ben. There's not a lot of these quarterbacks where I go, I'm hesitant to draft them. I think we've got to go probably all the way down. If there's a guy that I'm more hesitant to draft, we need to go down to my number 13, which is our consensus 18 in Dak Prescott, because he scares the heck out of me, man. I saw A Quiet Place, and that thing didn't scare me nearly as much as Dak
Oh,
Prescott.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Loved
Dak Prescott, the more that I've watched Des Bryant film over the last week or so to try to figure out what is Des? Like, was it him? I'm like, dude, I've been watching a lot of college film for quarterbacks and Des Bryant film, and the one thing that kind of sticks out is I think last year Dak was less accurate than some of these incoming quarterbacks, and that's not a good thing.
It's also what the knock on Dak was heading into the NFL. We just saw him kind of thwart that in year one. 16 through 20, Jared Goff. Mike, you've got him up here at 14. You're the highest. I've got Patrick. You can blame Patrick Mahomes at 17 on me. I've got him at 10. I've got Patrick Mahomes at 10 overall. With that offense, those weapons, and Andy Reid.
Easily our widest gap. I have him down at 22.
Fair. I understand. You have to take a
Somebody's
going to be in that top 12 we're not expecting. I think it's Pat Mahomes. Dak Prescott at 18. Jason, you've got him the highest of the group. Marcus Mariota at 19, and then Andy Dalton at 20. Oh, Andy Dalton, you love 20, don't you? You love being around 20. All right, let's answer a few questions.
Mailbag.
Yeah.
Oh, the mailbag. Visit the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Click the Submit a Question button or dial our voicemail hotline like this next caller did. 302-464-TFFB. Let's check
Hey,
it out.
footballers. Love the show. This is Ian from Memphis. I have a question. In my league, we have some slightly different rules. The one I'm talking about now is tight ends and wide receivers share roster position. So how does that affect your lookout on tight ends on draft day? How does that affect the top tier? Gronkowski, Kelsey, Ertz, and how does that affect the rest? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I mean, part of the answer there is obviously if they share a roster spot and you're not backed into drafting a tight end.
So we're talking there are no dedicated tight end starting roster spots.
Correct. And basically what that does is it really lowers the pool of tight ends that are going to be drafted. I mean, Rob Gronkowski himself would have slotted in around the wide receiver 12 last year, 11, 12, same as Brandon Cook's points per game. So Kelsey, Ertz, Gronk, they're still going to be drafted, but they're pooled, at this point with those other players. If you're not backed into starting a tight end, don't have to start a tight end. You're not looking to draft a late round tight end for any reason.
No, certainly not. And you're not going to, some of this will depend on scoring, position. In a standard league, your tight ends like Gronk might be a little bit more valuable. The third place tight end last year averaged 11.8 points a game in, half point PPR. That wouldn't have even been a wide receiver one. So you're talking about very few guys you want to draft, and you want to draft them around the range where you're drafting. If you're talking about the top three guys,
I'm not drafting one.
You're not drafting any of them?
No, not at all. Because someone's going to reach on Gronk.
Yes, Gronk
Gronk is the only person I'm interested in. Even Kelsey, Ertz, no, thank you. I'll take wide
Just
receivers.
because of the cost, though. I mean, at some point you would draft Zach Ertz.
In a league, of course. If somehow Zach Ertz is there in the
if you're
sixth
drafting,
round, this is pure points analysis.
Yes, it's points analysis. If you're drafting around your wide receiver, like the wide receiver coming off the board is the 15th to 20th wide receiver in that range, and you've got a Kelsey or an Ertz there, that's where I would consider it.
Yeah, I mean, for perspective, as opposed to Gronk, who's up in that top 12 wide receiver rank, Ertz and Kelsey are back down in that just outside. I mean, almost wide receiver 2-3 bubble.
Yeah, Jimmy
so
Graham
it changes everything.
Jimmy Graham, the tight end 4, would have been right around wide receiver 30.
Yeah, Nelson Aguilar scored more points than Zach Ertz.
No, thank you.
You would take Aguilar probably. All right, this comes from Jim in Columbia. Where's my listeners?
Bonjour.
Okay. Sorry, Columbia, South Carolina. Jason.
Oh, hello.
Where's my listeners' W-2? Tried to file my taxes, haven't received my fantasy footballers tax forms because this podcast is money.
Ching.
Totally helped me win my local league. Finished second in my money league. Y'all are the best. There's no question there, Brooks. Were you just tooting for us?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thanks, Jim and Brooks.
He liked the analogy. All right, Joseph in Chino Hills, California, going into his age 30 season. Speaking of Antonio Brown, is this the offseason, the time to move Antonio Brown in Dynasty? If so, what's the realistic return? Wide receiver is team priority if Brown is moved.
as a resident Antonio Brown in our main dynasty league, I've got Antonio Brown. Here's what I would say. If you are a team that looks like you need to rebuild, if you aren't capable of winning a championship, this is a great time to move him. But if you're in the running, which I feel like if you've got Antonio Brown, that's a pretty darn good building block to build a team around, then it's going to be difficult to get enough value. You're talking about a guy who's got several years left, but right now this year will probably be the number one wide receiver. It's hard to win a championship while making your team worse. So are you able to play for this year, or do you need to play for the future? That's the way I look at Antonio Brown.
I think it's fair, and I think you got to remember every trade comes with an element of risk of who you're receiving back. There's no guarantees in fantasy football, so you go make that trade that you think looks great to get that younger receiver, Stephon Diggs, and some picks or whatever you want to do.
I'll tell you this:
you're risking a lot.
Yes. I went and poked the Odell Beckham owner this last week with an Antonio Brown plus what for Odell Beckham to try to see what's the temperature, because you got all the trade rumors,
right.
the possible video with narcotics, is he going to hold out? All these question marks, that kind of the quarterback situation, which I think will be fixed in the draft. But so I thought maybe he'll be going, oh, okay, I can make my team better here, and I could pair like a C.J. Anderson and a 2019 something and get Odell Beckham. I would do that, but couldn't get it done.
Scott in Boston, Massachusetts. Will Josh Gordon outscore Jarvis Landry, and will either of them outscore Larry Fitzgerald? PPR league.
They will not outscore Larry, and I would, in a PPR league, I'm still gonna go with Josh Gordon.
You'll go with Josh Gordon over Landry in a
Jarvis
PPR?
Landry. Yeah.
He's got the ceiling. I would go with the tried and true Jarvis Landry out of those two, but I agree neither of them will outscore Larry Fitzgerald in a PPR. And that's coming from the person who you guys have falsely made me out to be a Larry hater. Love Larry.
Yeah, why do you hate Larry? All right. The next two episodes, huge draft episodes. Do not miss them. Check out draft.com/ballers to play best ball with us. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.